That's silly. It's just I had to figure out how to answer that. God might say that yes, mathematics is, at least some people think of it as the most perfect science, most precise. I mean, you can study philosophy all your life, and sadly, I had a philosophy teacher who was also a minister. I won't call his name, but he ended up a minister who ended up becoming an atheist, trying to figure out all the philosophical questions of life.
Mhm.
And I told my class, my Bible class, we have that every Saturday. I quoted Deuteronomy 29, which says that the secret things belong to God, but he gives us little knowledge, enough that we might understand to obey him. That's the more important thing. So God might say, well, your mathematics is good. Nothing tops, I'm just saying he might say this, I don't know. Nothing tops the Einstein gravitational field equation that really described the universe. And 100 years later, people are still talking about black holes that Einstein had worked out the mathematics. The first black hole, in fact, the first solution of the Einstein equation was by Carl Schwarzschild in 1916, a year later. Einstein was shocked. He thought it would take many, many years to solve his equation.
Mhm.
And the first solution was a black hole solution. So 100 years later, people are saying, oh my goodness, we can now see these black holes in the telescope, measure them, and Einstein was right. So God could say, that's very impressive what Einstein did to give write down the equations for a black hole, but that's minuscule. I'm the one that created the black holes. As it said to Job, that was chapter 38, I laid the foundations of the earth. Um, I bind the Pleiades. I loose the cords of Orion. So no matter how great we people get with science, other areas of knowledge, it's still infinitesimal compared to the might and the majesty of God. Back in probably 400 years before Christ, Plato made the statement that God ever geometricizes. And then Carl Jacobi in 1804, well, he was born in 1804. He said God ever arithmetizes. So they're looking at the universe, they're looking at God as his creation as both geometric and arithmetic. So this is our view as men or scientists or women. We see arithmetic and geometric structures, and we can go quite far up the ladder with our knowledge, but in the end, God thinks that we're just like little mice. Um, we only see, as Paul said, we only see just a portion thereof. And said that in 1 Corinthians 13th chapter. Um, so I think God might not be too impressed. You know, he could say that, I'll pat you on the head, little boy. You've done some stuff, you know, but um, God is God. We still can never underestimate what we overestimate. We should never overestimate. Let me make one more statement.
Mhm.
Some of the scientists had to um, ask Stephen Hawking just to be a little bit more humble. I mean, Stephen Hawking sort of succeeded Einstein, or maybe Ed Whitten did, but they saw great work of Stephen Hawking's, but they just felt that it's just good to be humble, no matter how great we tend to be, because God is so much greater. I don't really have a problem with the advancement of science. You know, most of the medicines that growing crystals in space. You now wouldn't even be talking with the cell phone. It saved many lives in emergencies. You get out on the highway with a cell phone, it could save your life. You could not do that if you didn't have the technology of space, because you're really connecting with satellites in space. So the development of medicine is going to come from outer space, come about new developments, or maybe inner space in the ocean, where you have these extremely poisonous creatures or plants that you make medicine from. So no matter what we explore, it's still very, as I said a minute ago, it's still very infinitesimal. The most amazing thing, one of the most amazing things about the universe is its size. It's just hard to comprehend. You know, if you can travel, imagine if you could travel 186,000 miles a second. So you look at your watch and you start counting 1 second, and you're 186,000 miles. You travel that far in 1 second. It would still take you about 8 minutes just to get to the sun. It's 93 million miles away. But compared to that 8 minutes, traveling 183,000 miles per second, it would take you like 40 years to get to the nearest star.
Mhm.
And I'm just saying the nearest star, 40 years. But then there are other systems where it's not 40 years, they are thousands of years away just with the travel of light. That's the speed of light. I mean, light coming from different galaxies can take billions of years. It's just so far away. That means the distance is so great. So what if a man went to a couple of planets? That would be like me going to my washing machine downstairs. It's just nothing. So God is not threatened. I don't think God cares that much about our exploration. He cares more about our humility, that we, what discoveries that we make, that we continue to be humble about it. That's, that Einstein has two theories. I mean, it's called the special theory of relativity that came out in 1905. And then in 1915, he has the so-called general theory of relativity. And that's really about the structure of space and time. And he sees gravity as the curvature of space. And that's what I said earlier, that his equations surpass the equation of Isaac Newton up until the work of Einstein. Most of the physics was, you open the physics books is really about Newton's work, or maybe like Kepler when it comes to the solar system as well. So the idea of force is the force of gravity, and of course that's what the Newtonian laws are based on. But Einstein viewed gravity. So let me back up. Newton's work is okay if we're talking about small distance, like the solar system. And when I say small distance, like 93 million miles from here to the sun, that's small distance. But when it comes to the universe, where again, it takes 40 years to get to the nearest star system, if you travel 186,000 miles a second, long, vast distance, the global structure of the universe, the naive concept of gravity as a simple force does not work. It's replaced by the curvature of space that particles will follow what's called a geodesic path, depending on the curvature of space. So it's the curvature of space that replaces gravity in a certain sense, that gives a more accurate description of it. And the first thing that really made Einstein very famous, not that it had to, because Einstein's equations were correct, was back in 1919 when Arthur Eddington and others measured the so-called perihelion of Mercury, how that's the closest planet to the sun, how this theory of space really determining gravity or the curvature, and they could measure it. That really put Einstein on the map as far as the public was concerned. But Einstein wasn't that, I don't think he was that impressed, because he knew it was right. And it took another 40 years when they, with the Manhattan Project, when they built the atomic bomb, the equation E equals mc squared, for that to be verified, because nobody has that amount of energy available until the atomic bomb was invented around 1944. That ended the World War II. By the way, I had the chance to visit Hiroshima at the very spot where the hypocenter of where that atomic bomb was dropped. They have a peace park there now. And I also say that, I don't want to, I'll make this very short. They probably didn't have to drop the atomic bomb because the war was essentially won with the raids over Tokyo. Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard begged Franklin Roosevelt not to drop the bomb. At the conference with Stalin, I think, well, Franklin Roosevelt died, and then President Truman came into office. I think he might have thrown the letter in the trash, and he wanted to drop the bomb so that Stalin wouldn't get the credit for winning the war. They didn't have to do it because they had already since won the war with the raids over Tokyo. That was a Potsdam conference that Truman and Stalin met. It seems that, again, that President Truman, he ignored the letter. Einstein begged him not to do it, and Leo Szilard, but it seemed like Truman wanted to get credit for really decisively winning the war, not let Stalin get the credit for it.